Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. My name is Oliver and I'm a former addict in recovery. We're going to do a interesting episode for you today. We're going to jump back into some more Narcotics Anonymous focused stuff. But first, a bit of info. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from addiction for people in recovery from addiction. There are many definitions of addiction, but we keep it simple. Addiction to us is when people use alcohol, drugs, or certain behaviours repetitively to their detriment. Basically, when it's a problem for them and their families. Therefore, an addict is not necessarily a needle-using junkie in a dark laneway, and an alcoholic is not necessarily a homeless man in a park. Recovery for us means using an active daily process or program to deal with alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, or other behavioural addictions. People in recovery are committed to complete abstinence. This daily process is as important as being able to live normal lives as daily dialysis is for people with kidney problems. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. I myself am a recovering drug addict. However, each day we will focus on a different perspective of recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step fellowships such as Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and other programs like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. So anyway, we're going to go into straight into a reading from the Alcoholics Anonymous Daily Reflections booklet, and we're doing November the 6th today, and it's called Going with the Flow. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 96. The first words I speak when arising in the morning are, I arise, O God, to do thy will. This is the shortest prayer I know, and it's deeply ingrained in me. Prayer doesn't change God's attitude toward me, it changes my attitude toward God. As distinguished from prayer, meditation is quiet time without words. To be centered is to be physically relaxed, emotionally calm, mentally focused, and spiritually aware. One way to keep the channel open and to improve my conscious contact with God is to maintain a grateful attitude. On the days when I am grateful, good things seem to happen in my life. The instant I start cursing things in my life, however, the flow of good stops. God did not interrupt the flow. My own negativity did. It's pretty interesting stuff. The first sort of part of that reading is talking about through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact. That's a step 11.1. So we'll get to talking about that in another episode probably, because today I want to actually talk about step 6. We've done a bunch of episodes recently about other stuff. I've talked about recovery dharma, smart recovery, what it's like for families who are going through, the experience of having a loved one with addiction. There's been a lot of stuff. I even did one about music. But today we're going to jump back into some sort of more, 12-steppy kind of stuff. I think, it's interesting. I mean, step 11 is really important, and you don't necessarily need to be working the steps or even up to that step at all to work on that. I think it's just a practice of meditation and perhaps some kind of like prayer where you sort of, or for me, I just say, I need some guidance through my day. And if I try and run the show, then I get into trouble. So I try and ask some kind of a higher power to guide me, and that just means I get in a bit less trouble and things seem to go smoothly. They're also talking about in that gratitude, which is really important. We can talk about quickly. We'll talk about what is a gratitude list. That's something that I've heard heaps and heaps in 12-step fellowships is, if you're feeling a bit, down in the dumps, write a gratitude list. Like, what's that? Well, it's just literally a list of stuff that you're grateful for, and it helps shift your attitude away from perhaps what they're talking about, cursing things and having negativity, to being grateful. And often for me, it's like, my car's broken down, or I've got to pay rent, and I can't buy that thing that I really wanted to buy, that new pair of sneakers or whatever. And I get caught up in that sort of daily life stuff where I can get negative and I actually forget what I've got. And that is like, I wake up every morning and I don't need to put a drug in my system just to feel normal. That's like the biggest thing. I'm in a loving relationship with a partner that I care about, which I wasn't able to have in active addiction. I've got a warm bed to sleep in and a roof over my head. There's food in the fridge. There's just so many things that I am grateful for. And in the act of writing it down, I think it just solidifies that and puts us into this attitude of gratitude. Gosh, that sounds lame. But I think, what I find is the lamer something sounds, my experience is that even though the lamer it sounds, the better it works, to be honest with you, which is, it's a bit sad, but that's just the way it is, for me anyway. So, what else were we talking about? We're talking about that gratitude and writing a gratitude list. You could write a gratitude list today. I do write gratitude lists, and often I forget how good I've got it. And it's often only when something like happens, like I get unwell physically, that I realize how good I had it before, and I didn't even appreciate it before. So it's writing a gratitude list is an opportunity to appreciate what is there and divert your attention away from what's not there, what you want to change, and get out of self-will. Start thinking positively about your life. And I totally agree with that when I start thinking negatively and getting really like annoyed with things going on in my life, the flow of good does stop, as they've mentioned in that reading. It sort of, when I shift my attitude away from one of generosity and compassion and love, and start thinking about negative things and being resentful and angry, then miraculously, not at all miraculously, it's obvious that I will start going around and creating more problems for myself, because I'll just be grumpy and angry rather than open to what's going on in the world and allowing those good opportunities to come. It's a very higher powery, goddy one again. And it just seems to be the way 12-step fellowships do work is that, it's a spiritual program, and that is a proven thing that works. And I've heard it said in, these 12-step meetings that I go to, if God scares you out of a meeting, then your addiction will scare you back in. And I totally agree with that. Like my using and my addiction was so bad that, accepting or trying to come up with or understand some kind of a higher power is not really that big a deal. I feel like it can be a big issue for a lot of people, the higher power thing. And I'm here to tell you that it's not that big a deal. Some people don't have a problem with it, but I think a lot of people suffering from addiction, we're rebels by design, and it's something we have to come to terms with. So step 6. Step 6, I wanted to talk about my experience with that. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So I've talked in previous episodes about all the steps up to step 6. We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And 5 is like admitting all the things that were wrong about us that we found out in step 4. So character defects, basically. And step 6 is about becoming entirely ready to have your higher power remove these defects of character. We're going to discuss a little bit more about that after the break.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast by Hills and Rangers Private. Now playing daily on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. For more shows, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.
I'm going to read to you from the Green and Gold, which is the Narcotics Anonymous Step Working Guide. So, yeah, as part of doing these steps, we work through a book, and it's got a bunch of questions that we answer. And through doing this work, we learn a lot about ourselves, and that's what it's all about. Is about changing the way we think and changing our life and our environment and just everything. And through doing these steps, that's very much the unpacking of the reasons why we actually use drugs in the first place and changing them, basically. So that's what step 6 is all about, is having your character defects removed. I'm going to talk from my experience that my biggest character defect is control. I've said this before. I want everything to go the way I want right now. It's my way or the highway sort of stuff. And it's problematic because the whole thing about life is that I can't control it. Things will happen. So, yeah, I'm going to read from the Green and Gold book, which is the Step Working Guide. Entirely ready for what? If we're new in NA and this is our first experience with the 6th step, many of our character defects will be so blatant that our immediate reaction will likely be one of overwhelming willingness to get rid of them. We're seeing them for the first time in all their glory, so to speak, and we want them gone today. Once we've gotten past our initial reaction, we'll find that we probably have at least some measure of fear or uncertainty about changing. The unknown is terrifying for almost everyone. We've had the defects we're about to let go of for a long time, probably most of our lives. We probably have some fears about what our lives will be like without these defects. Some of them may seem more like vital survival skills than defects of character. We wonder if the removal of our defects will inhibit our ability to earn a living. We may find that the idea of being a respectable citizen is repulsive to us. Many of us are strongly attached to an image. We're cool, we're trendy, we're outside of the bounds of polite society, and we like it that way. We may be afraid that by working the 6th step, we'll be changed into dull conformists. Many of us may think that we're nothing but defects and wonder what will be left of us if our defects are removed. Our fears are probably vague and unformed. If we pursue them to their logical conclusion, we're sure to find that they are unfounded. In other words, if we say them out loud, we can see them for what they are. And I'll read you a couple of those questions that are expected to be answered in part of doing these steps. Just so, I think it's great that I can sort of give you a little bit of insight into this, because I had no idea what NA was about when I walked into my first meeting. I just knew that I wanted to change my life and that this was one of the ways in which I could do it. So question 1 is, are there parts of me I like but which might be defects? Am I afraid I'll turn into someone I don't like if those parts of my character are removed? I don't know how I would answer that question. I haven't done this for a few years, actually. So I reckon I might actually start actively answering the questions again with my sponsor, and I'll talk you guys through that. Oof, I just had a great idea about what to do on some upcoming episodes. How awesome. Yeah, I think there were parts of me that I did like that might have been defects. And still today, I mean, even though I'm over 4 years clean, I can still answer these questions. Just because I've been completely abstinent from all drugs for over 4 years doesn't mean I won't get more out of it. As they say, more will be revealed the longer you stay in recovery. So yeah, there are parts of me that I like, but they might be defects. Can I list one? Might have to dig pretty deep for that one. Yeah, I think I always pride myself on being a little bit left of center and a little bit different. And perhaps there are some behaviors that I engage in that are not quite fully honest, and some of which are against spiritual principles. I don't think I'm afraid I'll turn into someone I don't like anymore. I think that was something that I was definitely afraid of in my early recovery, but I found that the more I actually live and work the program of Narcotics Anonymous, I actually turn into someone I like more. And then the next question is, what do I think will be removed? I think for me, the biggest one that I worked on and became ready to have removed was the defect of control. I think I could probably go a little bit deeper now if I was going to do this again and actually answer the questions myself. And I would say that I would like to have the defect of fear and fearfulness removed. That would be the coolest thing, because I think that control stuff comes from a place of fear. I always talk about that fear of rejection. So if I'm living without fear, it would just mean that I'm so much freer in life, and I think I would invite more positivity and more opportunity into my life. And that's what it's all about, is breaking down those previously conceived things. Talked about, what does it say? Yes, vital survival skills rather than defects of character. So I think all that fear stuff was just my sort of primitive kind of survival skill that I learned from being really unsure about how to live my life. I experienced things that were beyond my control, and I became extremely fearful of them, so that if I was to avoid those things, then everything would be smooth and I would be accepted for who I was and not judged. And those were all the things that I was fearful of. And I think, that's what I would become ready to have removed from me in terms of a defect of character, is just that fearfulness. You can think about it now for yourself, like, what would you like to have removed? Is there anything that you are aware of about yourself that you think doesn't serve you? Even if you're not necessarily working the steps or in a 12-step program, you can think about that. What would I'll ask myself, what is it about me that doesn't serve me that I'd like to have removed today? That fearfulness is one that I'd love to have removed. I work on it, and it's something that I'm still working on, is that when I realize that I'm acting in fear, I have to just stop myself and remember that, hey, I don't have to be afraid, is that things in life will happen, and regardless of whether they're good or bad, it's just a label that I put on it, and I'm just going to have to deal with it. I feel a whole lot freer from that experience already. I've been working on that for just under 4 years now, and it's a really beautiful experience to go through this. And look, that's really, I've only scratched the surface of step 6. But at least it's just an opportunity for my listeners to get a little bit of an understanding of what goes on. What is this 12-step thing all about? What are all these steps? I had no idea about what to expect. At the beginning of my journey, I sort of saw all that stuff from an outsider's perspective of seeing the typical 12-step meeting in a movie where it's like a cold, dark church basement with these really sad characters all sitting in a circle on these cheap metal chairs, and everybody's all gloomy, and it couldn't be further from the truth. There's so much carrying on and laughter and shared experience and strength in these meetings that it's just so good. You go in there and hang out with a bunch of people who have the same experience and enjoy some like a cup of tea and some biscuits and just do cool stuff, and it's a great journey, and I encourage you to try it if you haven't, and if you have, then good on you. We'll share more about this stuff over the next little while. Talk about my experience. Hope you enjoyed that. You've been listening to the Recovery Cast. My name's Oliver, and I'll see you on a subsequent episode in the future. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.